Arno's first garden that he created when he was 8 years old. And this is kind of what my introduction's about. I'm Viv, as I told you. I went through my childhood with Arno, who lived up the road at Murray's Bay. Arno, chuck a book or something at me if it sounds like a eulogy. My memories of Arno was of a rather magical boy. Now, whilst most 8-year-old boys were annoying the heck out of their parents and generally being a pain in the backside, Arno had a unique vision to design and create a tropical paradise in his parents' back garden. He succeeded, and then he went on, and he created a similar paradise in yet another back yard. In fact, I don't think Arno has ever stopped. No doubt we'll be in for a treat as Arno shares a lifetime of knowledge with us at this conference. Let's give him a warm welcome to New Zealand. Please welcome Arno King.
So on behalf of Arno, I thought I'd prepare. And Arno needs a lift back to Auckland on either Wednesday morning, or alternatively, if you're heading south on Tuesday and doing some of the gardens on your way south, perhaps you'd like to give Arno a lift. We have somebody would like to do that. What's your name, please?
Thank you.
What's the name?
Lisa.
Okay. Thank you very much.
That is a bit of a relief. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure how I was getting back. Good morning, everybody. Guys, I'm going to be talking a little bit about fruit trees and various other things you might like to consider growing up here, based on my experience, because I grew up here, as you've just heard from Vivian. I grew up in Auckland, and interestingly, was involved in tree crops fairly early on. My first work was with Selby Gouldstone. So I thought he had died years and years ago, but when I looked him up, he only died fairly recently. I remember once going with my mother to the Glenfield shopping centre, which was a big shopping mall on the North Shore, and going to the health food shop there, and Selby had a stand showing all the subtropical fruit you could grow, and got talking, and then he said, "Oh, do you want to do some work?" So my first work experience was actually potting up fruit trees in sewage sludge. Hello. Okay.
Push the button.
Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Yeah. Yes. Hello. Oh, this one doesn't echo. Okay. Sewage sludge. The nursery was in the Albany sewage station, and he had rented land there, and we were growing potting plants and composted sewage sludge, and I think pumice. But anyway, learned a little bit there. My very first paid job was working in Albany on both in a retail nursery and on a big acreage area where they were planting orchards. So it was planting pine trees for shelter belts, and I'm trying to think what we were planting. Maybe macadamias, and it was near Roseville Road in Albany. And I would think now that's all housing. So, well, I know it's all housing. So all that work for nothing. And I just remember frosty mornings, which I couldn't believe, where there was even ice on top of the water, and at times the water didn't come out of the tap in the middle of winter, which I didn't think was possible on the North Shore. But Later, I was quite interested, so I spent a lot of time at Land's End and with the Ents and seeing all the wonderful subtropical fruit that was coming in from South America and trials. So, and went on to Massey University where I did amenity horticulture, which was wonderful. And then next slide. So, know a little bit about some of the fruit trees that were grown many, many years ago. Finally went to Brisbane, big lights of Brisbane, to study landscape architecture, and actually had a few jobs straight after uni, and I stayed. But what I think is relevant to you is that some of the predicted climate change puts many parts of New Zealand on similar temperatures fairly shortly, and maybe even similar rainfall to parts of southeast Queensland, northern New South Wales, and maybe some of the fruit that we grow are going to be more relevant, and you can transition, particularly with your trees, where we plant trees really for the next 20 to 40 years. So you really want to be considering your future climate with some of your tree planting, but also plants that you can transition fairly smoothly to with the future in mind. And what I see is you're trying to grow sometimes plants that we can't even grow in Brisbane because they're too tropical. And there's a few things you're not growing which I think could be quite easy. So maybe that's going to be helpful to you. I've just got here the Ministry of Environment predictions, and particularly for Northland up here. For those at the back, you might not see. Generally, obviously, it's getting warmer by, eventually 2.9 degrees, which is fairly major. But you're going to be transitioning quite a lot in the North Island, and it's going to be drying out. I guess this is the big thing. Pretty much that northern tip and Coromandel Peninsula drying out quite a lot. And extremely on the East Coast is even orange around here. Now, the issue we have, there's drying, and look, it's maybe only minus 6 mils. I'm just trying to think what it is there. But what we have is increased evaporation and increased transpiration. So the temperatures mean you just need more rain. So that's one thing. The good thing is probably you're going to get more summer-dominant rainfall, which is, going to be better because you can use it for growing your plants. A lot of the subtropical fruit, as you know, really wants to grow when it's warm, and often it's dry here, so you have to give supplementary watering. And then in winter, you end up with wet soils when the plants want to be dry and they rot. So hopefully the transition won't be too bad. And also there is this other issue we have to face, that is you might get heavy rainfall for times and then drought, and many of the subtropical and tropical trees are used to that. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So next one. So even the Ministry of Environment says, in parts of the north, kiwi fruit, apples, stone fruit may not work so well, and in southeast Queensland, northern New South Wales, there are some people who can grow them in microclimates, but close to the coast they don't get the chilling hours. So you may get fruit some years and not get fruit other years, and people are telling me already some of you are facing that. And also, you may have to swap cultivars. There are low chill varieties, and Cheryl and I have talked about them. We would have to say they're generally crap. You're better off leaving people further south to grow them, and that's what we do. There's higher altitude areas close to the coast where we have apples and we can select really good quality ones, but you will see low chill fruit, and particularly with the apples, Anna and tropical. Oh, there's another one. I mean, they just taste like bland, poor quality, and if you had the option, you would never, ever eat them. So I would suggest be wary when you see low chill and try the fruit first. Okay, next one. Even purple passion fruit, doesn't do well for us. We grow more the Panama, what are called Panama reds, yellows, which I think are Ligularis crosses. So, and they are good, different flavour. So a few things. I just put some notes up here, and I'll just run through them very quickly. Positives and negatives, because I think you hear all sorts of things about climate change, and we're all grappling with it and with changes to what we're used to. I mean, from the point of view of species plants, look, the positives are you're going to be able to grow a much greater diversity of species, because as you get closer to the equator, there's just much more species diversity. So, I mean, that's going to be a lot of fun. You'll be able to grow lots of new things, and some of them will do extremely well. The negatives, of course, is if you're looking at selling them, taking that on to public acceptance. Some things are readily accepted because people are familiar with them, but it's hard to change, get people familiar with new crops. Replacement costs if you have larger trees and swapping over, and impacts on income possibly, and that's probably what this talk is most about if you are a commercial grower. Plants will grow faster because it's warmer, but people often say, oh, there's going to be more CO2, but it's always Liebig's law of the minimum. What often is most lacking is what's going to have the impact, and I suspect it will be water and minerals, and simply minerals because plants will want more minerals, and they won't be necessarily available in the soil, and we're going through a time where country by country is stopping exporting key minerals, particularly some of the trace elements, which are so essential, and I'll go on to why that even becomes more important as we go down. Am I still on? Okay, yeah. Hello. Hello. Oh, here? Okay, sorry, thank you. I'll make sure. Plants growing faster, pests and diseases. Look, it will be a hit and miss again. Many things will disappear. I was amazed moving to South. Southeast Queensland. Can you hear me, everyone? Hey. Hello? Hello?
Test.
Yeah. Okay. Look, some pests that are so familiar to you just don't like warm conditions, so they're going to disappear. Am I here? They will disappear completely, whereas other pests I think will appear. Unfortunately, I would have to say I would expect at some stage you will get fruit fly, because I know it's coming through all the time, and I think it is just worth being aware of fruit fly. There are many fruit that we are familiar with that don't get fruit fly. If fruit have thick skins or if they are very sour, they tend, that's a generalization, not to get fruit flies. So that has been interesting to me. And also, if their nutrition, am I there? If their nutrition is maintained, maybe I'm better off just speaking like this. Years of speaking at TAFE and students who don't listen. I do expect. Sorry. The other thing is that you will know from Queensland, if you have gone there, are all sorts of things you can do to monitor and control fruit fly, but I'm just putting it out there. I know it is coming through here, and it isn't getting established because of temperature, so it's an unfortunate thing. I'll keep going. Organic matter is going to quickly break down, and this is one of the things that was most startling to me, how quickly, if you have moisture in summer and the organic matter will be incredibly breaking down. You're going to have to apply it and maybe use things like humates and biochar just to keep that organic, the cation exchange, particularly if you're not on clay soils. Hello. Yes, I like this. You're going to get more summer rainfall, and I just mentioned that earlier about transpiration, evaporation. You will also get compaction, and that's quite. And you may be getting it already now, but so working with the organic matter is going to help reduce compaction, but you may have to do more tilling and preparation and ripping than you are currently experiencing, and erosion and runoff will be more important. And costs of water security, like putting in dams and tanks, may be increasing and may be more relevant. Nutrition, look, there is positives that you have potential to be doing far more sustainable management practices, potential to reduce costs with nutrition. And as I mentioned earlier, there are wonderful things like humates and biochar and a whole range of other things you may not already be using that you will learn about. So as to negatives, yes, soluble fertilizers will be leached, and many of you are still using conventional soluble fertilizers that were developed in cold temperate climates for a very short season to get immediate impact. They're not necessary in warmer climates, and you're better off with longer term using kind of a slow release then using rock minerals and working with your natural biology, and many of you are doing that already. The other thing, I think there is a tendency to get the pH dropping more regularly than what you're used to, and having to work with lime and just bringing the pH up a bit. So that's something that we do more than what you would do. Insurance, I think the negative, probably increased insurance costs because there's going to be, we're facing a lot more damage. We're all having it, and maybe, insurance isn't going to be an option. Infrastructure, positives, you probably won't be needing plastic and glass houses. And shade houses and trellising and fruit protection are probably more where the money goes, and that probably is a big positive. Oh no. Labour, everything's going to grow faster. There's going to be more mulching. I think labour is going to be a bit of a negative. You probably will be investing more in time unless you manage what you're growing and maybe how you're growing it. People don't like working in very hot, humid conditions. So I think that's an issue we face more. Also, in Australia, we have declining youth numbers. Our population is shrinking. So I think in New Zealand, you're probably the only country in the world where you don't have that rapid decline in population. But I would imagine that still young people will be less likely to want to work outside in humidity. And if you're using foreign labour, and I think increasingly we will be, it will just be education, time on education. Finally, biosecurity and importation. I think that there might be positive working with biosecurity on the need for essentials like food, and introducing some of the key fruit and food crops that are prohibited right now may help. I understand that mangoes apparently don't grow here, so and they're one of the major crops in any warmer climate. And just negatives maybe, because I think importation will be increasingly important, just the costs associated with importing, the better quality cultivars, and another negative will be there'll be smuggling more likely with strong biosecurity controls, and with that comes the threat of importing pests and diseases. Okay, next one. Okay, I'm just going to run through plants and some of our experiences. And pawpaws, I love growing pawpaws, great fruit, and there are really nice pawpaws. Unfortunately, in Australia and New Zealand, I think we had a history where we were forced to eat one of the worst varieties, which was developed by our DPI. It was called Patina, that big yellow melon-like pawpaw that you're probably all familiar with, which basically is one of the worst possible cultivars you could ever eat. And if you feel it tasted like vomit, it did. And I had it when I was young and thought, this is absolutely foul. But DPI developed it because you can throw it onto trucks. You can throw it on the floor. It won't mash. And, it grows big, easy to grow. And prior to that, the history, I live now in an area that did grow pawpaws. They were famous. They were sweet and tender, and the flesh was so soft. But when Patina came on, no shop would get it because it had no shelf life and damaged so easily. And that cultivar or series of cultivars have disappeared completely. But now we have many new ones, and we are in southeast Queensland. I would think we would be at the southern limit to grow them commercially. So the selections we grow have been selected for being cold tolerant, and there's some very interesting ones that I don't think you even have here now. So the good news is there's one we call Southern Red, which was collected on a agricultural station on the highest mountain in Taiwan by Peter Young, who had Birdwood Nursery, and he was shocked to see it there. They had quite frosted, plants were frosted in winter, but because pawpaws had been introduced by the Portuguese, I think it was already in the 1700s or earlier.
15 minutes to go.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, we will speed up. It's frost. There are a whole range of there are a whole range of pawpaws that take cooler conditions. So moving on, just back there, you grow Oakley pawpaw. It's very, very rare in southeast Queensland, but it's interesting us that we can graft our pawpaws onto the rootstock, and it's way more cold tolerant, and also it's drought tolerant. So if you do have that variable climate, it will tolerate both. And pawpaws also don't like drying out too much. They like incredible amounts of garden lime. So that's the other thing that gives them disease resistance. And you won't believe the difference if you just, every time you go past, apply lime around your pawpaws. They don't get so many diseases and they thrive. Next one. Pineapples, look, they're a major crop for us. Again, we're regarded as being very marginal, and a lot of pineapple growing has moved north to central Queensland. But you are growing the queen varieties, which are the harder varieties. I do remember Dick Ent introduced one from Ecuador, so you have that around here. It was widely sold when he was selling plants, so if you can get hold of that, that's a selection that has been grown for many hundreds of years at altitude in Ecuador and Colombia. Next one. Rosella, I think Rosella has a great potential, and pineapples and pawpaws are great crops because they're quick. You get fruit, fairly quickly, and I would regard them as transitional crops if you want instant fruit. This is another one. Rosella, you grow for the fruit. It's the fleshy calyx around the pod. Once it's flowered, there are flowers there. It was grown in Auckland many years ago, but needed care. Why I think it's great is that it's this multi-use plant that flowers in one season. It's a hibiscus, related to the native trionum, your native hibiscus, similar growth, and it's triggered by daylight. So as the daylight decreases, around January it switches from growing vegetatively to growing pods and flowers. And the vegetation, the new leaves and new tips are delicious. They taste of it's like spinach with a raspberry flavour. And so throughout Africa and Asia, it's often just grown as a vegetable. So you prune it often for the new tips to get a bushy plant prior to Christmas. After Christmas, you let it flower, and then it produces the pods. Very ornamental. Jill keeps reminding me it's one of the most expensive cut flowers. You get these red, kind of fleshy fruit on it, and you can pick the fruit. You can mix cut it up and put it into salads or various things raw. You can dry it and make it into a tea. The tea is one of the most in-demand teas in the world because it's used in many countries to lower blood pressure and to reduce stress. So it just tastes like raspberry cordial. And what else can I say about it? Look, I do think in the future with petrol costs, particularly in Northland areas, that having fruit that you don't need to get to market very quickly is going to be really important commercially, and growing a crop such as Rosella that you can dry and basically will last many years. You're not subject to market variability, but great thing to grow just to eat, and commercially I think quite important. Next one. Bananas. You grow way more bananas than I ever knew. So I was going to say, well, there are all these bananas that once again have been grown up in, mountainous areas, and there are selections, but you don't even need to know about that. Next one. You grow them better than we do. You don't have any of these diseases. Citrus, just a point, and what interested me moving to southeast Queensland was that certain things that were marginal here in New Zealand were just very common, such as pomelos and red grapefruit. They thrive, and limes do way better. And in fact, most people have lime trees and not lemon trees. I do gardening talkback every Sunday, and generally it's about mandarins. It's really hard to grow true mandarins in southeast Queensland because they're very much the coldest loving mandarins, and generally we would grow crosses with oranges. We call them mandarins, but they're not true mandarins. But even they're always hard. Lemons always seem to be the citrus that have short lives too. So just to keep in mind, and finger limes are very popular, but we grow many new hybrid selections, which are great improvements. So that's something for you to look forward to. Next one. And also, some fruit won't, the skins won't colour. So oranges can look more green than, only get blush. Oh, mangoes. And look, there's Cheryl. She does grow fruit. She's harvesting me some mangoes on her property. She has a wide range. Look, mangoes, I think, have the biggest potential. I think you're going to be growing a lot here. And actually, I think also you could be growing, there are selections that are grown in far northern India, up on, into the Himalayas, in really cool areas. And once again, there would be cultivars right now that would thrive. And it's just a matter of tracking down what they are and importing them. And I think you could have highly commercial mango crops, and you don't have the issues of disease and fruit fly right now. And you would have the latter part of the market, and I think you would do really well exporting them. So I think you probably would be growing reasonable crops once again, even now in selected microclimates. They're a great tree, drainage, but the one thing they never tell you, once again, is that they like lots of calcium. And if you keep the calcium up, you get less of the foliar issues, you get thicker skins, you get, again, having the calcium also increases the flavour. Once the minerals are up, a better flavour, and of course you're getting the minerals in your body. Next one. Macadamias, just wanted to highlight, you're growing them well, but recently there's been a lot of work in Australia because we've found new species and new plants. They grow around southeast Queensland, and we haven't paid much attention to them. Most macadamias in cultivation are really descendants of the Hawaiian hybrids, and it's only now that we're doing massive breeding. We've brought in Macadamia jansenii. It was only recently discovered, and it has much thinner skins to the nuts. It has a much higher ratio of flesh to shell, and it comes from a much further north and areas subject to drought. So we're looking forward to
better macadamias, but they've also found odd macadamias that haven't even been identified with really, really large nuts. So the macadamia industry's had funding to send botanists out looking for macadamias in the wild, and it's been a revelation. So they're already, the trees are available to macadamia growers in Australia, but I would imagine that they will be becoming available soon. And there's a massive program of new cultivars, so keep moving. We don't grow cherimoyas, we grow atamoyas, which are Cherimoya squamosa crosses. Now, the benefit of that hybrid is that you do get more heat resistance, you do get more drought resistance. I personally think that I love cherimoyas. There is a perfume and a quality in that fruit that I probably slightly prefer. I would like to see atamoyas cross back with cherimoyas, because then I think you would get better flavour. And also I think atamoyas, which we call custard apples, so custard apples in much of the world, they're way too sweet. So that's my thing. And New Zealanders are good at hybridising, so I reckon getting some atamoyas and getting more cherimoya in them, you get a much better fruit. And it would grow much better for you. Next one. Oh, that pink one is one called Iyama, which is just very new, and talk to Cheryl about that. It's just amazing. And there is breeding for red-skinned and pinker-fleshed ones as novelties.
I've brought in some seeds for you.
Okay, there you go. Pomegranates, they interest me because there's been a lot of work on them, and you all grow pomegranates well, but what we tend to grow certain cultivars that tolerate our conditions, which are high rainfall, and I think it's one wonderful and Ben Hur, which are widely cultivated, but with disease, as you get warmer and wetter, you will tend to get black heart, and certain cultivars are useless. So there are cultivars that have traditionally been grown in the Middle East and in the Mediterranean, and they have the redder fruit. If you want to get the ones that may be of interest to you, they tend to have more of the pinker or greener fruit, and they are grown in Pakistan and India, where they have summer rainfall. So just to let you know, I never knew this, but you do have variability, and there are well-known clones in all of them. Next one. Jackfruit, I think once again, well worth growing. It's the only new fruit, and how am I going to 3 minutes. I will speak. It's the only new fruit that has got immediate market acceptance, and once again in Asia it's grown into the Himalayas and into cool areas. So there are cool growing clones, and it's relatively drought tolerant. As Jill keeps saying, you want to plant it very, very young, almost as a seed. Growing it in a pot and then transplanting is hard on the tree. Next one. Dragon fruit are very popular with us. You're growing a few here. There are so many amazing cultivars. The initial cultivars were bland. There's new cultivars with beautiful coloured fruit, but with citrus flavours, raspberry flavours. So don't discount them. Look, I think there's so many species involved in the hybrids that there would be those that are worth researching for more cool tolerance, and for drought, amazing. Lychees, I always find them a bit of a diva for growing, because where they grow well, they grow superbly well, and on deep soils, obviously, with regular moisture. Other areas not so well, but once again, I'm told that there are cooler growing ones, and again, well worth investigating because they're an ancient crop grown over a broad area and delicious, one of my favourite fruit. Black sapotes are incredibly tough in southeast Queensland, and they're delicious, I think, and they're just not known. Once again, it's getting various cultivars. Do you know it? It's just like a persimmon, related to a persimmon. Who likes chocolate? Well, they're not pure chocolate, but I love sprinkling Coke on top. Keep moving. Chocolate, sorry, on top of it. What did I say?
Your habits are showing.
Sorry. I love cocoa, I should say. Yeah. Oh, top. Quine look, I thought this is interesting. It's related to jackfruit. And again, researching it's not widely grown in southeast Queensland. It's Kwaimu, came from South China, and it takes a bit of drought. Seems to be totally hardy for us, almost unknown, I would say, commercially, but tastes delicious, like an apricot, but better. Next one. Jujube, look, you're growing it already, so I might pass on with that with short time. Jaboticaba, many of you are growing it and you have some of the better ones. I thought it might be interesting up here because it's made into liqueurs and wines, high quality, and with transportation for some of the growers that, again, you have a product that you can preserve and you aren't subject to the ravages of the market. Ramichana, one of the Brazilian Eugenias. People love growing them in our gardens, and I think they're well worth growing. Grumicama, there's red and yellow, I like it. Now there are all these garcinias. This is our chacha, came onto the market from Bolivia. Delicious. We have them in the supermarkets. Immediate acceptance. It is a mangosteen. And it looks good. It looks like orange and is the size of orange tree tomatoes. You peel the skin, delicious flesh. But there are a whole range of different garcinias. You're growing some of them, but this one is particularly drought hardy. I've been recommended by growers in Queensland, for you should be looking for Luke's garcinia. That it comes from Mexico and it should do well here now, but garcinias are the mangosteen family, some really great ones. Next one. Coconuts, I think once again there is potential to grow these, the market demands them. There are highland versions, so if you can import them around Asia, up in many highland areas, they are growing them, so it's selections of those varieties. Talked about fruit, just to remind you, there are trees that you can grow for leaves. You're growing some of them now. Moringa. I'm always told grow them from hardwood cuttings. Seedlings, even in our climate, are really hard to establish, but once you have seedlings with wood in winter, you take cuttings. But I love the leaves, like mustard flavoured, delicious. Sweet leaf, I'd be growing this, or katuk, this one on the upper left. It is so delicious, like peas, and I'd be growing that in greenhouses. And it's that ferny one there. Down below is Sesbania or hummingbird tree. The flowers are edible and the leaves are edible. They're in the markets, both quite delicious, and you could grow that in greenhouses or as a summer crop. And a beaker, I saw that in the quarry. And it has delicious leaves. I won't be able to do all of my slides, but there are a whole range of other crops. Sorry.
Can you just ask if people can hear right at the back?
Can everyone hear at the back? Sorry. Do you keep going? Hey, I'll do just one or two more and just leave it. Look, the other thing, spices. I think spice trees, you would be growing a lot of them. And once again, spices are worth a lot of money, and you are not subject to the vagaries of the market. So money was made on spices. It still is made on spices in Queensland. So investigation, I wonder about all anise, star anise, because it does love. Anyone growing star anise here? I would have thought it's the perfect crop for this climate, or even in greenhouses. High demand, likes a climate where it doesn't get too hot or too cold, and that's why I'm thinking this would be ideal. Grown in northern New South Wales, allspice you're already growing, so there is commercial demand for it, for the leaves and the fruit. Cinnamon, there are different cinnamon types. I think already you could be growing acacia cinnamon, which is used in cooking of North India and China, when I went to Sri Lanka, I just realised just how they grow it. They coppice it, and the new growth is the bark is peeled, so well worth investigating. And cloves do grow in southeast Queensland, and they're all high labour, picking and processing, but they also have high cost. And if you can intensify flavours, so all of these spices, if you have flavours, it's terroir, the climate, the soil that produce the flavour. If you get a flavour that is really good, your product will be in demand internationally. Next one. Root crops, look, you are growing these, sweet potatoes, taro. Taro is one of those crops that I think is worth better investigation because of its health benefits. It basically was the fuel for the Polynesians and Austronesians to head down from Taiwan, go right across the Pacific, right back through Asia, right round to Madagascar, and before the Second World War was the second most widely grown root crop, but people have neglected it. There are so many wonderful cultivars, and in cooking, we're familiar with some of the Pacific Island food, but the Asian and Africans do wonderful things with them. And cassava, once again, there are highland cassavas, one of my favourite chips, I think, again, worth investigation. And yams, once again, there are highland versions, and there's tremendous diversity. Next. And to end with, I just thought about food for famine, just to open up the exploration that people get very concerned about hotter and drier growing conditions. But even in the driest, hottest places, there are a whole range of foods. I've picked some of my favourites. Tops is chaya, which possibly now would be a greenhouse crop. But it's from Mexico, and the great thing about it, it's got so much cyanide in it that nothing touches it, but you steam or boil it, and you have the vegetable. On the other top left is Taro, and we call that Suriname spinach. Again, it's a succulent, can tolerate extreme dry. Obviously, the leaves are nicest when it's wet, but it can just be left in the garden, and it's a nice spinach substitute. Getting into extreme drought in Rajasthan and really dry areas, they grow Cissus quadrangularis, and I've forgotten the common name, but it's a relative of succulent. The succulent people already growing it. It's a relative grapevine. You eat the leaves, but it's totally drought tolerant, and punty is widely used. I better finish here.
Show them the leaf blower.
Oh yes, we do.
The leaf blower.
Yeah, look, I was going to talk about water and heat. Trellis, actually go back, we better mention trellis, sorry. Boil don't burn, that was only, we're hearing a lot about eucalyptus and various things. You're going to have tremendous bushfires. I would say be totally aware of planting flammable plants because it's, we just, we had bushfires and I hear acacias and eucalypts mentioned, even pine trees, we're always boil don't burn is the big thing, and being aware of ember attack around houses and your crops, using succulents to stop fire. So I do think particularly in Northland it's going to be a huge thing. So check out, fire. Trellising, this is what's being done now around the world, and I think, again, with the changing climate, even more important, that this is custard apples and persimmons. And look, I've seen even mangoes, and we're growing my favourite fruit, durian. That's being trellised now for a variety of reasons. The trellising, bit of work getting it done, but you end up with air circulation and less pest and disease issues. You end up with greater volume of fruit on those horizontal lines and much easier to pick. So, and you can just get more into a limited space. So it's the ideal scenario, bit of work up front to get it going. And then once it's going, it's so much easier at every step. And with cyclones and variable weather also protects the trees aren't so badly damaged. Finally, the blower. This is George, one of our fruit crop members, and he's combined the blower with the sprayer, and it means you can get high up into your mango trees and your giant jackfruit trees and get the sprayer in. So thank you very much. My apologies for going over time.
very much, and you'll have to have questions during the break time, which I'm afraid is going to be 15 minutes. So could you please now have a break, a blessing upon the cup of tea.